chatting with
3Ds and
people.
pictures. Yeah, I keep looking in there and seeing a lot of conversation
Hype.
about it. Like someone was posting weapon models or some shit too.
Dude, I have weapon model postings from like forever ago where I did that. Did you see it? I made
I've seen
custom.
one.
It's like, let's see how long ago this was. Weapon
Yeah,
Importer was originally posted in 2014, and in 2016, so 5 years ago. Look at that.
you're master sorting.
Yeah, I put a master sword in. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And then this was a random model I found online that looked kind of EQ-ish, and literally got it to fully import via Maya. I was using Maya at the time, and got it to work 100%. So that was pretty cool. All right, so we're starting the stream up. Everything looks good. We're going to go ahead and hit up D Drive Games, EQ Tools, because that's where I keep a lot of my tooling crap. Then we have EQ Zone Importer, right? Here's the actual zone importer, and here is the program that you know all so well, right?
Yeah, I opened it and I was like, okay, go to import. All right. Find a file. Oh, look. I don't know what the fuck a wavefront OBJ is. I was
Okay.
like, GG.
So I'm going to kind of handhold you, make this like a slight tutorial-esque thing, and other people can potentially take advantage of this as well. So there's two ways that you import through the EQ Zone Importer. You can just file open the Zone EQG, which is kind of the recommended route for Xalia. However, from what I've tested, it does not work with a large chunk of EQGs. Namely, after a certain expansion, the formatting got tweaked, and that's going to cause errors with this loader. The other is that you use the utility convert S3Z zone, and that's obviously for older zones. So, for example, this is just my Lazarus directory. You can see there's quite a few S3Ds. In fact, I think all of the original zones are S3Ds. So, like Plane of Air, The Fallen, you notice the extensions are all S3D. Cobalt Scar. So, I think a question for you is, what zone is like the closest to what you're envisioning for your custom one?
Probably something like Eastern Wastes or something. It's got a lot of snow and shit.
Okay, so we're going to open up Eastern Wastes, which is extremely fast. It converted it successfully. You're going to immediately notice that when it shows you your summary of what exactly was imported, you know, you got all your vertices, you got all your triangles. There's 25 materials used, a material being something like a BMP, right? It's some sort of reference to an image, typically. I say typically because there's some edge cases where like a material might be more like a bump map material or some other type of, you know, whatever. But you'll notice that regions is 0, and that you know is incorrect, because what a region is like a zone line or some sort of trigger that causes you like a, you know what I mean? You click on this object and something happens. That's a region. So this tool I've never actually seen successfully export or import regions very well. And the same thing with lights. You notice that 0 lights?
Mm-hmm.
You can add them manually through this tool, but the fact that you're losing it on import is kind of crappy. And the only like successful from scratch test I've seen of this was Packets. He did like a MOBA style League of Legends map, and he still leveraged Nexus. Like, I don't think he used it necessarily for the baseline of his model, but he used the Nexus zone files and such. You know, like when you load it in game, it was Nexus.
Right.
But anyways, so like all the materials you can see here, most are opaque, and that's the various textures that are being referenced. And you can actually see what the actual reference is to. Like these are the antlers, BIMP, Rigor, probably external wall. You know what I mean? And there's no OBJ data right now. So regardless, now that we got it here, right, what do? So with EQG format or S3D conversion, the next step is that you export the zone. You want to put this somewhere that, you know, can just be kind of, think of it like a scratch disk or your project disk or whatever, right? So like if we go to EQ tools again, in the zone importer, I'm going to just make a new directory, called it zone. And inside of here, I'll make a new folder, and I'm going to call this East Wastes, right? So I'm going to open that file up, and that's going to export. We can actually go to that real quick over here. here's Eastern Waste. This is all the files that make Eastern Wastes, right? Including an OBJ.
Okay.
An OBJ is basically a 3D model. Like that's the actual model data. Actually, it looks like Windows 10 is trying to auto-load it and has a progress bar. That's interesting. MTL is some of the material data that basically references all these BMPs to the OBJ. So let's go ahead and open up Blender. And once we get into Blender, we can just hit General. You're going to have a cube. If you press X and then press Enter, that always deletes the cube, like at the start. So now you have an empty scene. If you go to File, Import, and then go to OBJ, and then navigate to your zone importer, which would be eDrive Games, Tools, in my case, EQ Zone Importer, wrong one. And then Zone, there's Eastern Wastes, and you'll see that the material and the OBJ files are there. So we're going to go ahead and hit Import OBJ. It's likely going to be rotated 90 degrees. That's just typically what happens. But you can see here it's here, and it's going to be black and white. And the reason is because by default in Blender, that's how it does the rendering. If you look at the top right, there's this little viewport shading button, a little sphere. If you click on it, you should see materials now. Wait.
I can't find the right angle. I'm like looking around.
Yeah, there's a way to do that. I actually don't know. Like, I am not at all a expert at, the 3D parts, but I do know that there is like in modifier properties, you can add a modifier, I believe, and do a transform in here somehow. I forget the actual term, but basically you add a modifier to temporarily rotate it. And then when you're done, you can remove the modifier and that puts it back to the original orientation. There's a way to do that. I don't know it offhand though, unfortunately. So because I don't, we can also just go to the object, which it shows you my skills with, there it is. You can see rotation. We can turn off that 90-degree rotation, right? And now we are oriented right. Another hotkey that's really useful is if you hold Shift and press the grave key, you go into like WASD mode, right? So you can like navigate. You can see the world now, right? And instead of having to go through the 3D space navigation, this is you can see it on the bottom. It gives you all these little hotkeys. Like if I press spacebar, I teleport to whatever I'm looking at. You see that? And E makes you navigate up, like you fly up. Q flies down. WASD makes you run around. And when you left click, you confirm that location now is your location. So Shift and then the grave key, which the grave key is above tab, right? It's that little grave marker.
Yeah, like the tilde?
Yeah, the tilde, exactly. Shift tilde in Blender is a godsend because now you can actually fly around the scene, you know what I mean, and kind of get oriented. Now, we already have one issue, and I mean, we have a couple, but the biggest issue right now is that those mesh files, or the materials did not load, right? So let's go ahead and start debugging that to start. So we're going to click on Eastern Waste, and we're going to go to the Materials tab, which is the Materials Properties, and let's just take a glance. And you can see here, each material, right, is referenced on the right side, and they are linked to the actual images. So you can see here, W1.bmp looks referenced. The fact that it's not rendering in world is a little odd. What we can do to kind of like spot check is if I press tab, it's going to go into, like 3D edit mode. Especially like on the top left of Blender, these are your different like viewer modes. And above that are your different like workspaces. And by default, I think we are in 3D viewport. Yeah, it looks like it. And then you want to go into edit mode, which that's what the tab is. So tab object mode, tab edit mode. You see that on the top left? Yeah. With edit mode, what this will let you do is there's these three little buttons on the top right. And one of them is face select. And if you do that, you can click on a single face and basically inspect the face to see what material it has. So it's apparently it's material 5 that these are all referencing. You see that? Which that makes sense. These are all what are called icsnow1.bmp, right? So for some reason, icsnow1.bmp, this file, is not rendering in Blender. I went ahead and clicked the next option over, which is Viewport Shading. And you can see here everything is very reflective. But this version should still show. It could be because of this Crustacean Burley, or there's a I haven't done this in a while. There's a way to change how the rendering works. I wonder if this is just a bug.
Render pass?
No,
I'm looking at
it's
like the render pass thing.
I'm I need to actually set up my oversight too. So if anyone else hangs out, but you're looking at voice or Twitch as well, right? If someone did come in and start talking,
Yeah,
but there is a way to change the surface, which I think he just put it to like emission instead of Christian Burley. Is it emission? Emission's going to be like a solid color. What is the value? Man, I can't remember it. It's been a while. I did figure this all out, but I don't know it now. Essentially, though, we need to tweak the material to make it at least preview decently. But at the end of the day, right, just to test, let's go find a location that we both are familiar with, right?
I'm over here by the Rawr hat. I'm looking at it right now.
The Rawr hat?
It's like a big ass fortress in the middle of the zone.
Yeah, let's see if I can find it easily. So like here's the edge of the world. There is the Rawr hut.
There it is. Yeah, you move way better than I do in this.
So again, shift grave and then just press spacebar and you fly to whatever you're looking at.
Oh geez, the spacebar is really fast.
Yeah, spacebar is to the
really
next
slow.
object that you see. Like, look, if I press spacebar, I go right to the wall. Spacebar, I go to that wall. Spacebar, I go to that wall. You see what I mean? You can jump shoot. It's a lot easier than holding shift and running, because shift run is kind of slow because the world is so big. So, but anyways, yeah, let's okay, so I'm gonna left click so it confirms this location. If you right click while in that mode, by the way, you get teleported back to whatever you were at initially. So right at the entrance here, right? Because that's a pretty easy, prominent marker point to verify this with. I'm going to do something wonky. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the vertex select, right, which is the very left one. I'm going to go ahead and select a vertex, like you see the one up here on the very top. We're going to go ahead and I'm pretty sure, is it Z? No, it's G to grab, and then it's like X to move on the X-axis. You see that? And that'll move just that object on a specific axis. And then you can press escape and go like G, and I think there's Y. And now you're moving on the Y-axis, right? And G, Z, obviously, to go on the Z-axis. So if you ever want to tweak a single vertex just to test, you can go G, X, and we're just going to move this vertex away, right? So this is a super obvious malform where I'm literally just taking a existing vertice and just moving it. Unfortunately, this is actually making a hole. So let's actually take a corner instead, which is a edge select, and do the same thing. G, X, and actually the same thing happening. What is the way, because this geometry is not formed properly, right? Like everything is not truly there in proper sense. But you know what? For the time being, it doesn't really matter. We're just testing anyways, right? Let's go ahead and just move this away, right? So this is being a super obvious, like now we can walk inside the wall here. So now we're going to go ahead and hit File, Export, and hit Object, right? Go back to, where you saved everything. Tools, EQ Zone Importer, and work just pinged me. I'm going to have to go check that here in just a moment. Eastern Wastes, and arguably you could actually rename the old one to East Waste Original, right? And then export this one. I believe there's some tweaks that need to happen here, but for now let's just export and see what it looks like. All right, so I just exported it back as an OBJ and called it Eastern Wastes, right? So now there's an Eastern Waste Original, which was the file before I did mods, and now Eastern Wastes.obj. This is the one, and all I've done is move geometry, right? Just to verify the whole process. So how do you get it back?
What was your hotkey to like edit like what I have clicked? Like I'm looking at the pillar and I have the like point on the edge there clicked, but I don't know how to edit it.
Give me 1 second, I'll tell you. I need to check my messages. CC, okay, somebody's mentioning me. Let me see if I can, if it's an immediate thing or if they're just asking. My mobile app likes to not show me messages sometimes. It's just hourglassing. Okay, so what you want to do is make sure that you're in edit mode, right? So tab key while you have an object selected will show you all the different vertices and such on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then on the very top left, there's 3 modes. There is edge select, vertex select, and face select, right? And what I did is I did edge select. I click on that, right? And now if you click on any line in the game, like, you know, this line, that line, whatever, it's going to select it and highlight it, right?
Right, yeah, I see that.
So now that you have something selected, you press G. I always think in my mind G for grab, right? I want to grab this. And if you just start moving your mouse, it's going to start moving like freeform. But it looks ugly and it's kind of a pain in the ass to really manage it that way, right? To do that, you need to lock your viewport to a specific angle, right? So that you're kind of locked. So go ahead and press escape, and that returns whatever you were messing with, right? Then press G again, and then press a axis. The hotkeys, by the way, are on the bottom of your like status bar. You see that? X-axis, Y-axis, Z-axis. If you want it just to be on the X plane, you hold Shift-X. You see all that data that it tells you on the bottom with the hotkeys?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're going to say G and then like X. And then a line, a pink line appears. And that is basically the line you're scrubbing as you move your mouse, is across whatever axis it's displaying.
Oh, okay. There's a lot with this tool. Holy shit.
Yep. And then if you left click, you commit it. But if you press escape, you undo it. Like you discard it, right? Like if you just press escape, boop, it goes right back to what it was. You know, and then if you press left click, you commit, which of course, just like all other programs, if you press Control Z, that also will undo the last action, right? So if you haven't committed yet, you can just press escape and it, you know, reverts that oops. But if you press if you've already committed it by pressing left click, then you can get Control Z to undo it. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, I got the tower open just like you do.
Awesome. Give me 1 second. I got to go look at this. My phone's still not loading the message.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Just somebody asking me for my opinion on something. It's not pressure. Okay. So now that we have the object and we've exported, which was just file, export, OBJ. And then for now, I'm just doing default settings. I don't know if anything needs to be tweaked by the defaults, at least for my defaults. But once it's exported, we're actually going to need to do one thing. We can't forget about that. Remember, when we first messed with this, we changed the rotation. It used to be negative 90, if I'm not correct, or not corrected. So let's export the OBJ back with negative 90, because orientation does matter. But, I mean, that's an easy operation, right? Because with how EverQuest does zone files, it's a BSP is what it's called. That's why there's like this huge bubble thing. The whole world is essentially encapsulated. And so every vertice is actually part of the same object, right? Like everything is sort of one big object, which means it's a pain in the ass just to like natively work with in Blender, but you know, it's doable. Anyways, all right, so we have easternwaste.obj. What we're going to now do is the importing process. So if you go to import, and now my email is going crazy. Man, I'm on lunch, dang it. Okay, that's related. Okay. So what you want to do is in the import tab, right? You have a target location, which in my case, it's going to import to eastwaste.eqg, which is perfect. This tool only exports, which I don't like the tab calling import because it's technically exporting. But you want to export to eastways.eqg, right? It has to do EQG. It does not support generating S3Ds. EQG is a better format anyways. So you're basically updating the old file to be newer. And it's nice because the EQ client, especially ROF2, by default, overrides S3Ds with EQGs. So if there's an EQG in a path, it'll load that prior to the S3D. So they can coexist. You can keep the old one, and then, this new Eastern Waste EQG will supersede it. Anyways, so now that we have the target directory, for the source, we go ahead and hit search and, set it over again to your output directory, which is the zone importer in my case, zone, east wastes, and you're going to see your objects. Just select your non-original OBJ file and hit import. It might crash. Typically, it always crashes for me after I do a conversion. I'm planning to look into the importer and why that happens, but crashing is normal. So again,
yeah, mine did too.
Yeah, it does it every time. There's some sort of something wasn't freed, whatever. Anyways, if you hit import and then hit search again for the source, you'll find it still remembers the last path. And then you just hit import, and it should succeed from a fresh start. Success. Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and start up Lazarus, because I can get to pretty much any zone pretty easily. Oops. Oh, it's C drive games, Lazarus. And then EQ game. I have a little shortcut here. We'll boot up. We'll jump in game and verify if the Rigor 4 got tweaked,
I'm on the way there on my server.
Yeah, you'll probably beat me. So Lazarus, we'll hop in. And I'm only using it at Lazarus because it's there. And I know I can get around relatively easy. I don't have a GM access. Holy crap, my phone is going nuts. Work is messaging me a lot, but it's all right.
Everything out here is human models for me for some reason. What the hell?
When you went to Eastern Wastes?
Yeah. Maybe I did this wrong. It's not different here for me.
It's possible. So here's what I recommend, right? In general, when you're working on these files, ironically, the logs gives you a lot of intel. The dbg.txt. All right, give me just a moment. I have to run to Eastern Wastes, which, man, not being a GM sucks sometimes. I'll probably make a server of my own here in a second. But anyways, if you go to the dbg.txt, I'll show it on the stream here in just a sec too. You will actually see it when you zone over if it's loading the S3D or EQG file. Wow, am I that lost? Why am I?
I mean, could I just delete my S3D, right?
You can, but it shouldn't impact anything, because what you're looking at is in the dbg.txt file. It should tell you what it determined as far as what file to load. So in there, you should see it saying, loading eastwaste.eqg. And if it does, then you know that it's succeeding, at least in regards to grabbing the file that you exported. Because there's, eastwaste.eqg did not exist prior to this processing we just did. I'm going to have to run from gfadarc. And I don't have a horsey yet, do I?
Yeah, it says attempting to load eastwaste.eqg.
So that means you are succeeding, at least in regards to the file is loading, right? So you don't need to touch your S3D. And when you're done with this, if you want to revert, all you have to do is delete the EQG file from the zone, from the directory, and you'll get 100% reverted back to normalcy, There is some caching mechanisms going on, just to warn you. I've noticed that if you have eastwaste.eqg, you zone in and it loads it for the first time, and then you zone out, and then you delete the EQG file. When you zone back over to eastwastes, your client will crash, because it will try to take a buffered copy of EQG, thinking that's now the de facto standard, and panic. So you get a crash. But, expect a lot of crashes when you're testing this, because we're pushing the limits. But let me verify if mine's working here. I'm almost to Eastern Wastes. I'm human and not with a horse. At least I have sow. And let's go to the logs too while that's going. So in the DBG, man, this is like, yeah. You can see here, we are currently about to zone. I'll wait till to zone, and then we can actually see the data that it loads. Zoning. All right, so here goes the event of zoning. Waiting for character to zone. In fact, you can just search for EQG. There it is. Attempting to load eastwaste.ekg. Lit has 0 vertices. Expect it to have 1,100 something. So lit data is being ignored. I forget what lit data is. I think that's lighting. But basically, it's saying there's no lighting data. So you notice right when I got in the zone, well, first of all, it put me something weird. In fact, my world is still rotated incorrectly. I think that's what's going on here.
Was it supposed to be positive 90 and not negative 90, maybe? What
It's
do you think?
very possible I messed my orientation up. Because if you notice, on mine,
yours it's totally different, yeah.
But it definitely did something, right? You can see that my
100%.
My data has moved things. And interestingly, I'm floating on water, and the water is solid. Like, I can jump on water. Nice. Happens to the best of us, right? All right, so either the orientation, let's try rotating it positive 90 real quick. That might be an easy fix. I don't know, though, if that's really gonna be the fix. Let's try it. All right, so let's export. It also could be that my export options are incorrect. I don't have my notes anymore. Because you can see here, forward and up are
okay.
In the transform.
This time I got it. Oh, jeez.
Are you getting an effect, though?
Let me show you.
Oh, boy. Go ahead. So you have a rotation issue, but notice that it is working.
Yeah, all my textures are working.
So that's great.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I think I see my door is open down there.
What was that?
I think I see the wall is open down there.
Yeah,
Maybe.
so we have the rotation issue on yours, but everything else looks pretty good. And I say pretty good when you consider... I mean, you literally just took it into a thing, modified it, moved a vertice, and then went through the whole processing. And one thing you should check, once you do a little bit more testing, is see if the water's animating and see a few other little aspects like that. Some of that data gets lost in conversion, unfortunately. And I don't know if that's recoverable. Like, I think you may suffer side effects like that across the board just because of how the processing's done and how Zalia's tool supports that stuff. It's not, unfortunately, 100%.
Okay, so I think I have to completely log out. Close my client all the way.
I think if you camp, go to character select, edit the EQG file, and re-export, it should retain settings. I could be like, it should let you load.
It seemed like it. It looks exactly the same. My rotation could still be messed up, but I thought I just fixed it.
And guess what mine does every time I press import? On the bright side, it's search, double click, import, right? And just restart the client each time. It's not end of the world effort, but I'm going to test it with the other location here real quick. See if we get better results. How are we doing on time? It's been about a half hour. Not too bad. So I'll load back in. But yeah, so now you know basically what I did to add a cube. The difference is that I put the geometry on the wall, like on a existing area, and then you fuse it. And I forget the commands, but basically you merge the new vertices and triangles and such into the existing geometry. And once they're fused, oh man, I'm falling to my death.
Okay, mine worked.
Mine did not. I'm seeing my geometry, but I look rotated again. How did you end up rotating it in the end? Was it just proper orientation, or?
I just put it to 90 degrees instead of negative 90, and it had me upright when I got in.
So yeah, I probably just messed that up in the end. Not end of the world though.
All right, I'm gonna go check out the water and see if it's animated or not. I don't remember if the sky was always like so black.
The whole world is black because there's no lighting data.
Oh, you're right.
Like, that's to be expected, unfortunately. But yeah, just, do some spot checking. I know that some of the models got messed up, and that's because the world also contains links to the car data, the CHR, and that includes the models.
All my models were messed up before I came in here.
Oh, then never mind.
Like, I think these are just messed up because of my char.
You've probably just mucked it.
No, I just never touched the zone. This was how it was when I got here. I've never done anything in the zone.
But as you can see, once you do this, once you get this data working, the next big, iteration.
Yeah, the water's solid. Not animated.
You can probably just walk on it.
Let's see.
Yep. So how water data is stored on the world file basically has flags, and I'm pretty dang sure Zalia's kind of solution to his export import was just ignore that data. So this is why, like, now that I was getting a little bit more serious about making a zone or tweaking existing zones, I'm like, those are big flaws to have. You can't just
not having water is a pretty big issue.
Well, and just general, like, losing zone data and whatnot. So that's kind of why, I could extend his existing tool, but I also want to extend it, or I just figured I'd start from scratch and, learn end to end and do GLTF, because GLTF lets you do metadata, right? So that you can store extra property data on the actual file. And what I'll likely do is prepare the GLTF in a way that you can basically create custom objects that float in the world geometry. And when I load your GLTF back into a WLD file, I'll translate a lot of that custom property stuff so that you can now define regional stuff, like things that don't exist in GLTF, world normally.
Right.
But you'll get a 3D space representation in Blender, and you'll have full, end-to-end export import featuring. And all you have to do is adhere to some, property tweaks. Like these custom properties will have, is water will be like some sort of property that can get exported and imported.
Right.
And
dude, that would be huge. That would open a lot of doors, I think, for people.
Especially for custom zones. So like when you use this stuff, you're going to fall into all these, traps. Like even if you make one from scratch, because arguably how you make one from scratch is, now that you have the geometry and all that crap, is you basically delete Eastern Wastes, right? Or you base it on Eastern Wastes and create your new geometry following the same rules. And once you have all that done, you can actually start to, get it working.
I'm always going to have to overwrite a zone, though, right? Like, there's no way for me to just create a new zone because it's not. Right, or am I wrong?
If you hack the client or inject it in the DLL to support the new zones, you could.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get that.
But the truth is, there are a lot of zones to overwrite anyways.
Right. So there's not really a reason to do that.
Yeah. The naming is a little wonky, and like the zoning, entering name, text, and all that stuff will be, or like when you wall.
Right.
But that's a small price to pay for custom zones. But that actually is on my radar, is, adding with the new secrets exposure, the new DLL exposure for de-input, is to add custom zone support into that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you should talk to Splos, dude. That guy has done like so much stuff with that DLL. He shows me all the things he does with it. It's crazy.
Yeah, but it's slower priority. Like obviously getting this geometry data
right.
to work properly is really my
100%.
focus right now. But
Because
anyways,
it seems like there's like minor issues with that. Like you don't, it's not really that big of a deal to have the right name when you zone in, right?
right. To me, that
end of
is
the world.
small potatoes, and it's honestly
Right.
going to be easy to fix. But the bigger issue right now is we have zones that just don't work literally. Like you can't do an export import clean in yet. So yeah. So that's my plan, is to improve this. But for the time being, now you understand how to modify existing zones and work with them. And yeah, hopefully that was informative.
Yeah, this was super informative.
Cool. All right. Well, I think you making an EQ zone. No, I am taking Eastern Wastes, editing it, re-importing it, and then showing all the side effects that happen from the process. And this is with Zala's tool, which, as far as I understand, is the most comprehensive, publicly available tool out there. Lantern is more features supported, like as far as they export cleaner, but they can't import at all. And same with Ali's. Ali has good, like it supports exporting to GLTF, but he's foregoing a lot of the regional data as well. So I'm actually taking all three of those projects to write mine and basically going on that direction of, I want bidirectional, give me an existing zone, let me fully import it, and let me fully export it cleanly. Because the moment I can do that, making custom zones is going to be a lot easier, because most people, when they work on EQ zones, are going to be like, I want to do the thingy at Peniel where the door opens. How do I do that? Well, look at the zone file. Is there a geometry there? No? Okay, so it has to be some sort of third-party object, right, that gets imported. But now you have something you can base it on instead of just guesstimating how to do it, So, anywho, cool. Well, hope you learned something. Thanks for hanging.
I sent you a video, like the first video that made me want to do this. It's super old. I can't remember who linked it. You've probably seen it before.
Oh, but see, this is just editing, I think, adding in geometry, right? Or no, is this a custom zone?
I don't know. There's a lot, dude. That's 2007. I don't know who that is.
So he's using OpenZone. So, and this is a route that I've looked at. I actually have the tooling here. The problem with OpenZone, at least when I used it, was all the documentation for it is horrible.
Yeah, it was really bad.
A lot of the data that's happening with OpenZone is what's the word? It's just a different approach. Like, I think from scratch, though, it could potentially work.
Because if you look at this video right here, it covers all the bases, right? Like, he has water that's running. He has mobs that are like moving around and pathing. Yeah. It looks like it has every form, right?
And honestly, like, this is all you would really need. Because, like, with this, because you want classic zones. And classic zones, I mean, this is literally everything you would need for that. Like, you can tell this is like an Everfrost expansion or a Velius expansion right here. That's pretty cool. You can even see the bad geometry. Oh, I guess that was real geometry. Interesting.
Yeah, it's all, I don't know, man. I seen that video.
That is cool. I hadn't seen this video.
That's crazy.
So I don't know if Tolan... I wonder if Tolan is still working on it. He said 13 years ago he updated it, but isn't that sad? This was 13 years ago.
And we're all trying to figure out.
You're like 5 years old.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I mean, I could look into this more. I remember somebody showing like the Quake 3 map, bidirectional importing, or at least taking a Quake 3 map and doing it. But I'm not fully sure how they baseline and create these sort of files. It would be cool though, like, let's try it real quick. Let's make a new one. It's going to be outdoors. I don't know any of these data sets yet, but that's fine. Outside texture set, none. Above water texture, choose, nothing. Okay.
Hold on, let me link you something. Because this is not all knowledge from me. I got linked to this by somebody else in EQEMU. I think his name is like, I don't want to say his name wrong. It starts with a D.
Deacon?
No, hold on.
There's a lot of D-named people.
Yeah, there's a lot of D names. I just don't want to missay the wrong person. He ended up sending me a Google Drive of all sorts of textures that he pulled out, as well as telling me to use OpenZone if I wanted to make a zone.
I can see that. Like, I've not gotten too deep with this.
Here, those are the textures he said to use.
Okay, they're just converted to 24-bit BMP, it looks like.
Yeah, it should just be a huge zip of EQ textures that were pulled out.
Got it. So yeah, I would have to look into this, but I could potentially learn it. And this may be a better tool because, arguably going it from Blender is not necessarily the best way because they are making BSP maps, right? So like using a BSP based world generator is better. Why is there a SQL thing? That's interesting. But you got some cool geometry that you can baseline on. I don't know how this all works, so let's just export this for fun. We're going to call a new zone East Wastes. It's a very original name. This will build an E3 continuing textures in your scene's reference. You cannot distribute any S3 files you create unless you have permission to distribute all the textures. Continue? Yeah. Could not export the zone map file. Please make sure that your EQEMU maps subfolder exists. That's fine. I don't really care. I mean, I could make a maps folder, but... Oh, so they have some existing ones. Let's try that real quick.
Here, let me show you these messages. This is basically what it was. It was Dead Zergling. He linked a bunch of stuff. He linked some geometry he was working on in Blender, it looks like.
Okay.
And then he linked those textures, and he said... a couple months ago, I went crazy and converted several hundred textures to 24-bit and power of 2, which is what OpenZone prefers. I can send you a link if you like. And then he sent those textures and then OpenZone. And he said, this is probably the best. This is what he'd recommend if you're trying to make a zone. And they showed that he was trying to make like those slippery steps in Velcator, pretty much.
Nice.
Like a icy obstacle course.
Right.
So it looks like you can work it.
Now this is where it gets a little bit crazier because now I'm editing an entire directory of files. Because like before, East Waste was just 2 files. All right, just the SUD, but now we're editing the sound bank files, sounds. I think those are new files. Yeah, you can see. The README we don't care about. East Waste, the car data, and the object data is all going to get edited with this. So that's a little concerning. Have you ever tried to export and just save like one of the example tutorial zones? That might be worth trying.
I haven't got that far. Like I opened up a new one and then completely got lost.
Gotcha. Well, you could try that, or I'll try it later. I need a better, I need a clean client. I don't want to use Lazarus necessarily. You know what? I'm going to just copy it real quick. It should be pretty fast. I think I have space on my C drive. Not much though. 10 gigs. Ugh, I always run it too low. But anyways, cool. Yeah, I'll have to mess with that a little bit later. I mainly just wanted to show you what I know and the downsides. But yeah, if we can get this to be like the norm, this is amazing. Actually,
that's huge. Yeah, that is
dude,
huge,
I would
man.
love to take something like this, right, and like just start hacking together like an entire new EQ expansion just like this.
Right, dude. It would literally be new EQ.
Yeah, like take Velius and then continue after that. And no Luckland, no model revamp.
Yeah, not go to the moon anymore.
Yeah, no. Well, that's actually what I did with Rebuild, if you remember. I don't know if you ever heard that, but that was my plan, was after Velius I'd go new. But it would be fun to take like I know that somebody did this, so I won't necessarily Koinos, but let's say you start in Freeport, right? That's the center of the world. It's all Antarctica. In fact, we take out, Fedor and Otis for the time being, and then expand Antarctica, where, for example, in Neriak, you can actually get through and get deeper in Neriak and go to the Underdark. And you know what I mean? Like,
right. You could just like open up a hole in the back, really make it a zone line, right?
Exactly. Well, and like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Depths of Dark Hollow, but that was basically the Underdark expansion. What they did is in Nectalos on the river, they had a hole, and once you go through there, you go into this like mushroom world, like underground, kind of Underdarkish looking thing, and there's all these like Underdark creatures and stuff. So, but taking that mindset, doing it with the original models, and just making an entire game where, that's just one example. Like, you could even take Runny Eye and have a sub-zone of Runny Eye that spits out and takes you over into, like, the Crescent Reach area, right? Which Crescent Reach is a legit, Serpent Spine expansion. But reimagining it, taking it with original models, and then taking your own lore with it, that would be amazing, right? And just being able to take existing EQ zones and just expanding each one with these new things to explore, right? Or new zone contents and stuff, new dungeons to weave in with the originals. That would be a lot of fun to explore, wouldn't it? Because it's, it's what you expect already. Like, oh, I'm going Eastern Waste to, or not Eastern Waste, East Commons to West Commons to Kithakor, right? But then there's this, the deeper forest of Kithakor zone, right? Whatever you call that. That would be cool, right? Just to be able to go that route and just a little offshoot of the original EQ. I think that's
right,
cool.
Because Classic was really small, but it was premium. Like, every zone was interesting.
Yes, and you could sit down and make zones that kind of expand out that original lore, and that also makes it where, like, when you teleport to the different wizard spires that everyone knows, you know what I mean? You know what the nearby zones are, and the new ones won't be too hard to learn, right? Like, oh, there's a zone now off of Lava Storm. Like, Sol Temple is actually a guard point to, Sol's Inferno, right? Which is a new zone that's behind Sol's Temple. So all you have to do is port as a druid to Lava Storm if you want to go to Sol's Inferno, right? Because you just go through Sol Temple.
Right.
Navigation's a little easier when you do it that way, right? But anyways, yeah, no, this is cool. This is exciting stuff. I might have to play with Open Zone, I think. I think Open Zone was code. Did Open Zone ever give its source code?
I'm not sure.
There's likely somebody somewhere that has at one point, hopefully, because if it doesn't, the tool may be like considered dead. Even though it works, it's like we're going to be stuck if there's ever a bug we hit. Open Zone is its own here. This actually gives you a step-by-step. The problem is everyone does like Mediafire and all these other video links. It's just like, it's useless. You don't get any of the... But it looks like Crip was the OG. He may still be around in some capacity. But I'll play with it, see if I can get it working. Because that would be amazing. I agree. All right, dude. I'm going to take off. Take care.
Later, dude. That was awesome.
What program are you using to make custom zone, Finar? Oh, just answer him real quick. I used EQ Zone Importer to do it from Blender, but I think Open Zone may be the way to do it. Cool.